Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special CyberScoop video. I am talking today with Kunal Anand, the CTO of Imperva. Kunal, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Really looking forward to chatting with you.
How are you holding up in this new reality?
Holding up fine. I apologize if you hear my toddler running around. You may hear her scream. You may even see a cameo in this video.
Hey, I may also have a cameo. I'm sure my kids might come barging in at some time. So we might have a cybersecurity video with some dinosaur figures, some dolls. Who knows?
It's awesome.
Yeah, fun times. But one of the conversations with this new reality that we're hearing more and more is how this is going to affect the 2020 presidential election. And one of the big things going on across the country is the move on, I feel like it's double-sided. There, I feel, is one side of the argument saying, hey, let's do online voting. It's time. We can do this really quick. We can spool it up. And then there's people that want to do this more by mail. Vote by mail. We've already seen some movement toward that in some states with some primaries. But what do you think is possible right now for 2020? What way do you think our government should be leaning?
So I'm actually worried about and voting by postal mail, predominantly because we're seeing issues with budgets, just generally with the U.S. Postal Service.
Right.
And so could this actually impact voting and what that might actually do to particular states and turnout? Um, so then there's the flip side of it, which is online voting or mobile voting. And we have incredible capabilities as a human race when we want to work together to solve a problem. I look at just last week when we saw Apple and Google working together just to do contact tracing. And so the fact that you have two disparate platforms where you've got two different vendors that are working together to make changes to the underlying operating system so they can accomplish that. And truly, when you think about the numbers, just how to scale voting, it seems very doable. It sounds like there's people that post online and social media that generate more views content-wise than probably voter turnout might actually be in terms of numbers. So it feels like from a technical perspective, we have the capabilities, we have the tools, we just need the right incentives to get that started.
So we've done some reporting on CyberScoop, particularly around the Votes mobile voting app, which has been used in a couple smaller elections, or on a smaller scale, I should say. In West Virginia, it was used to let
Mhm.
military members vote in elections in West Virginia. I know there have been some other programs in Washington and on the West Coast. But there have been some security audits done for votes that show, even though we have the technical
Mhm.
capabilities to make this happen, from a security standpoint, there are a lot of vulnerabilities in this platform. And I'm wondering if you've paid attention to what has gone on in votes and whether you've looked at any of the security problems that have occurred there, and whether or not you've seen that and gone, maybe we can't do this right away in 2020.
So I think it's going to be hard to get up and running in 2020. I think that this is going to be something that I think you just called out. Even if we were to accelerate to online voting, I don't think we'll have all 50 state participation or 50x states participating in it for 2020. I think it's going to have to be rolled out over time. And I think we'll have to find a strategy for getting individuals accustomed to voting, whether it's via their smartphone or via their computer. It's a complete change of behavior. And you can't expect that change of behavior to happen. Although I've been proven wrong, especially with coronavirus and the augmented behavior I think that we all have. But the thing that's interesting, you called out the risk that exists with voting, and there's a crazy threat model that you have to think about here. It's the systems, but also how voter fraud m- could be accomplished. So specifically, how could I impersonate your votes? How does the system know that it's truly you and actually you that's voting versus someone else? And I would say that that's some of the more interesting considerations here. I feel less scared about the actual technology. I feel less that it's not necessarily about the technology. We generally know how to encrypt things. We know how to hash things. We know how to transmit data securely. It's just a real question now of how do you scale a program like that out? And so do you leverage things like real IDs, government identifiers? Like what do you typically use, or what do you want to use in this sort of um, post physical voting world, right? To vote and identify that you are who you say you are.
So I even with all of those technological advances, I guess, that you could say. I don't think that 2020 we're going to be seeing online
I agree.
voting, but what is the time frame, do you think, that this could happen? Because I do agree in some sense that we are going to eventually move there, even if it's not full online voting. I think you're going to see it be an option. So
Mhm.
what do you think as far as the timeline, and what do you think the big hurdles are in order to have this happen?
I think it's going to be 2028. That's my prediction. My
Okay.
prediction is we'll probably see online voting or mobile voting show up in the 2028 elections. I think if we work backwards from that, it means that 2024 will need to be beta tests or alpha tests across various states, with some states going into production. So maybe you take more technology forward leaning states. So it could be New York or could be California, and you have those particular states up and running, and maybe not even the entire state, but just counties in there. And then you work further back, and it means that maybe certain regional voting or county voting or municipal voting could move to this system fairly quickly, like in the next 2 years or so, just to ramp everything up. I agree with you. I don't think you can turn the lights on. There's no way you can just like flip a switch and say, we're going to do online voting now. I think it's something that you're going to have to ease into over time. And I think that's probably going to be an 8-year horizon from where we are today. In terms of the big rocks that you asked about, I think the rocks will probably be, and what I really feel strongly about is it's not just writing code, it's about that audit. And you called it out already. Like, it's not just writing some source code and deploying it, but who has access to it? Is it doing the right thing? Is it working as expected? Is the code good? And so having more eyes on it, if this is a democracy, can we have more people looking at it? Can we build an open voting platform that's out there in the open that more people can contribute to? Can you look at it at GitHub? Can you assess it? So just more eyes, the better. I mean, we found this to be true with cryptography. When we've opened up crypto algorithms, people have found issues and weaknesses, and they've improved the overall vector for crypto algorithms today. Could we apply that same thing to voting? Whether it's for construction of a website or APIs or mobile applications, auditing the work that would eventually be done by the providers. And maybe we follow a similar model to what Apple and Google are pushing with Android and iOS. Um, Maybe we build something directly into the operating system that gets turned on federally or on a statewide basis. Again, there's lots of options and lots of ways we could do this. We need to address those key pillars.
So switching gears, your company Imperva released this week a bot report that
Mhm.
looked at all of this bot traffic that is going on across all different types of industries. And let's start. The report says that you guys found the highest ever traffic when it comes to bots. Explain to me that factoid right there and why that is so worrisome.
So what we mean by that is, specifically with bots, there's basically these automated scripts that folks use, and there's good kinds of bots. So good kinds of bots being things like Google. So when you want to get your website crawled and indexed, you need the Google bot to come by. And of course, they're bad bots. And what we mean by bad or malicious bots are bots that are there to maybe steal information from your website. A common attack vector that we see, and the one that's really troublesome for us, is what we call account takeover or credential stuffing, where you have bots that are attempting to log in as you across lots of different websites. And they have a dictionary of maybe usernames and passwords where that information may have showed up in a breach. Maybe you were part of a vendor breach over the last few years, or one of the customers that you work with could be a bank or could be a retail site. Maybe their information got leaked. And of course, you may be in that data set. What we're finding is that we see a lot of bad bots that are trying to log in with you or as you, and some of them are succeeding, which then has further downstream consequences. So second and third order effects, where if they can become you on one website, could they use that password somewhere else? Could they change that information? Could they harvest financial data from you? Could they buy things on your behalf? So we see lots of that kind of behavior today, whether it's around authentication or authorization fraud. Other issues that we see will be around people that are trying to buy tickets. People, I called out scraping earlier. We just see lots of interesting behavior. And of course, this is an election year. So there's a big question around how might this affect things like business registration? How might this affect things around voter registration? Specifically, the number that scared us the most was about 37.5% of the bots in the government industry or the government sector, as we call it, were labeled as malicious. So it's pretty scary for us.
So how do you differentiate good behavior from bad behavior? Because I think about a lot of the actions that you just described there, where if I have a sneaker bot and I'm just trying to get Jordans, I want that bot
There you
to
go.
act like me. But if, of course, I don't want the same bot to be turned around and used to, you know, take my harvested credentials and try to log into my bank account or some other e-commerce account that I have. So how do you differentiate the behavior between what is a good bot and what is a bad bot?
It's super tricky. I would say that's probably what delineates the different bot providers, because you have some organizations that are just out to stop all bots, but you can't do that because, as you just mentioned, there are credibly good bots that exist out there. Google being one. That's kind of middle area if you're talking about scoring Air Jordans. So like we can talk more about that later.
Okay.
But ultimately, it's really understanding behavior. So there's things that we do like client classification or device classification, understanding whether or not you're using a mobile device, if you're using an actual web browser, what version of the web browser are you using, where are you coming from geographically, how much time have you spent on the site, how are you moving your mouse and keyboard on a website. So we can actually track how people are moving their mice on web applications, so we can understand if you're a bot or a human. And what we're finding is now bots are getting more sophisticated. So there's
Right.
two things here, like bots are being driven now to have like random and erratic behavior like humans do, which is kind of crazy. And then the second one that we were, I would say, more curious about now is we see bots as a service picking up. Predominantly, we see that a lot of people have use cases. So maybe you want to score Jordans from a retail website, or you want to buy tickets somewhere, or you want to score concert tickets at a specific venue. You can, spin up a bot army if you wanted to, just bots as a service. Give them a specific use case, some quick programming, or if you don't even know how to do it, you can give the use case to someone else, pass the costs along, and they can do all that work for you. And that's kind of, and now you get into the sort of cat and mouse game, I think, that really exists in the space. And I think bots aren't going away anytime soon. The problem's not going away anytime soon. I think what organizations really need to do, if they really want to figure this out, is outline the personas for who you want to use your applications. Understand that every time you put a new experience online, you could be the subject of a bot issue. So really think hard about, do I want to put this information publicly? What could it actually mean? How could this information be abused? When you have things like logins or forgot password flows, are you actually monitoring those flows? What if you see a surge in those flows, a surge in people requesting passwords for a specific username or a password? That's the kind of stuff that I think people need to be more mindful about. So taking what we see in production and shifting more of that mindset back as early on as you can in the secure software development lifecycle.
Great. Kunal, really appreciate you hopping aboard. No kid cameos. We got lucky this time.
Good.
So really appreciate you hopping aboard and talking about this stuff with us. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.